I can give it to you after I get done with, let's see, hold on. Let me see where it's at. Okay. All right. As long as you give this back. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on. Okay. All right. All right. Is this on? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. Welcome. Thank you for being here as we mark the dedication of the EMU's Inclusivity Science Mural. My name is Dawn Neal. I serve as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator here at Eastern Mennonite University. We are so grateful to have students, faculty, staff, alumni, and the Harrisonburg community here. Before we begin, I want to take just a moment to help us settle. If you need to silence your phones or take a deep breath after a busy day, now is a great time to do that. I know I need it. The mural represents collaboration, creativity, and a shared commitment to inclusive representation in science. It exists because many people across disciplines and across time believe this work mattered. Today's program will begin with a featured talk, followed by a panel conversation, and we will conclude upstairs at the mural for the dedication, where Pinar Sinopoulos-Lloyd and Dr. Rachel Levine will sign their portraits, followed by some light refreshments. Hold on. Yep. It is now my honor to introduce our featured speaker. Pinar Sinopoulos-Lloyd is an indigenous wildlife tracker, writer, and guide whose work bridges indigenous ecological knowledge, field-based science, multi-species studies, and poetic inquiry. As a neurodivergent scholar and a practitioner, they bring a sensory-attuned approach to perception, pattern recognition, and relational awareness in the natural world. They are the co-founder of Queer Nature and a faculty member with Weaving Earth, where they support immersive learning at the intersection of ecology, identity, and belonging. Their work invites people into deeper relationship with place, community, and the more than human world. Please join me in welcoming Pinar.
Hello. Just making sure my mic is working. Yeah, okay, y'all can hear me. Perfect. Oh, yay, friends. Thank you all for being here. Ayanshu Sutini Pinar Turkiye Mantakani. Annem Keçua geliyor ve İskoçakalı ve benim babam Malatyalı. My name is Pinar. I use they, them pronouns. I actually forgot to put that up there, but that's my full, long last name, too. And before we begin, I just want to invite you to notice one thing in this room that is not human. It could be a current of air, the smell of rain on your clothes. You can soften your gaze, too, if that's supportive. Light moving across a surface. Scholarship for me often begins with that kind of noticing. I want to begin not with information, but with orientation. And I'd also like to start with a poem. In my work, poetry is not separate from scholarship. It's a form of phenomenological research. In many indigenous knowledge traditions, story and image are not separate from science. They're methods for transmitting relational understanding. It is also one way of orienting attention, of entering a field of relationship and inquiry. So I invite you to listen not only for what the poem says, but for how it might shape the way you perceive what follows. Next slide, please. So this poem is called Lineages of Attention. Before I learned the names of constellations from printed charts, before ecosystems were rendered in the clean geometry of slides, I was apprenticed to movements that did not recognize the boundary between science and prayer. Hoofprint filling slowly with rain, time entering the body of an absence. Lichen composing its slow thesis across basalt. The electric hesitation of songbirds when a predator is still only a possibility. This is how my scholarship began, not in citation databases, but in attunement. A distributed sensing in an autistic nervous system that refused the fiction that perception must be standardized to be considered intelligent. I learned early, attention is not something you direct. It is something you enter. I do not walk into rooms alone. I arrive accompanied, not only by my ancestors, but by wind pattern memory, by the unfinished sentences of rivers, by antlered questions still moving through my body looking for somewhere to land. And sometimes, inside, the voices grow faint, muffled by carpeted acoustics, by the steady fluorescence of certainty, by architectures designed to keep the world from entering. So I followed my scholarship outward, not as refusal, but as fidelity. Fidelity to the constellations of kin who were still speaking in frequencies I could not afford to lose. They taught me that attention could widen until it became a field. Meaning, you do not approach directly. you arrive sideways, through scent, through repetition, through the almost invisible negotiations between wind and fur, between shadow and pulse, between hunger and restraint. I learned that knowledge migrates, that it refuses enclosure, that it can be stored in antler scrapes, in ecocultural burn scars, in the subtle insurgent reappearance of grass after it had been told it should not return. It was there I met indigenous scientists whose laboratories were Camas prairies in bloom, whose peer review was kinship, continuity, survival across generations that had every reason to forget and did not. They did not ask if the land was alive. They asked, how do we remain accountable to what is already in relationship with us? They taught Aina, sacred reciprocity, not as a metaphor, but as method. Reciprocity as calibration, as the ongoing adjustment of giving and receiving until balance becomes a felt orientation rather than an idea. They taught IU kinship ties not as identity, but as condition. Community as an ecological fact. As something you're already a part of, inside of, whether or not you know how to feel it. And in their presence, something in my perception reorganized. I began to understand that neurodivergent ways of sensing are not deviations, they are inheritances. One of the oldest technologies of attention. Forms of ecological intelligence capable of registering entanglement before it becomes visible, before it becomes crisis, before it becomes data. A way of knowing that does not wait for permission to feel the field. So I stand before you today, not as an individual achievement, but as one more listening body within a lineage that never stopped tracking. A continuation of multi-species scholarship unfolding across this continent since time immemorial. Indifferent to the borders that came later, long before knowledge was asked to prove itself in languages that learned to study forests, even as other languages never stopped belonging to it. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, sorry, can you go back? Because I forgot to tell you what that picture was, and it's really beautiful. So the picture here is obviously my nails, but no, it's also, which I don't have currently because I am climbing these days. But it's a picture of me holding snowy buckwheat or snow buckwheat. And I don't know if you can notice on the little edges, but there's like a 45-degree angle, like cut on one of the edges over there. And it was harvested by a bushy-tailed wood rat, which is one of my favorite rodents ever. And it was I found them right near their nest where they lay them out in the sun to dry before they put them in their homes. So I just wanted to name that. And now we can go to the next slide, please. When I say my scholarship began outside, I mean that very literally. One of the first moments I understood tracking as a form of knowledge happened when I was following elk. This is actually a picture of a puma track, but they're in deep kinship with each other. It was an early morning, coastal fog, still holding low in the valleys, the kind of light where edges feel softer, but sound travels farther. I wasn't looking for elk. I was already inside their sentence, following a line of disturbance written overnight into soil, stem, and scent. Next slide, please. At first, it translated easily. Hoofprint, direction of travel, a small band moving steadily through brush. Hoofprints deep in damp soil, lupin stems bent but not broken. Fresh scat still holding warmth. But these were not just signs. They were movements, decisions, negotiations with terrain. A conversation already in motion before I arrived. The longer I followed, the less it felt like I was tracking them. The more the trail stopped behaving like information and started to behave like atmosphere. My attention began to widen. I started noticing things that weren't tracks in the usual sense. Birds fell quiet, not all at once, but in a pattern my body registered before I could explain it. The wind shifted, not direction, but intention. And something in me tightened, not fear, recognition arriving too early for language. Then the brush thickened. Coastal lupin, dense, blue, insistent, pressing against my arms as I moved through the elk trails. And that's when the reversal happened. The moment tracking turns, when you realize you're no longer following. You're being followed by the field of your own attention. The land reading you with the same precision you thought belonged to you. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite pictures, I just have to say. Oh, and I forgot to say, all the pictures I've taken, I took those photos. I'm just gonna pause and just say, these are the belly scales of a gopher snake in silt. So you can see the scales of the belly scales kind of a little bit there. And it's just so beautiful. This is my driveway. And then rupture. I had split the elk herd. I didn't know until her voice entered my body. A bark, sharp, not loud in volume, but absolute in authority. The matriarch elk. An all-female band reorganizing around my presence, her body circling, calling her kin back through me. Not anger, correction. A force that said, you are inside something you do not get to define. And in that moment, belonging stopped being a feeling. It became a consequence. My body, part of the disturbance pattern I had been studying. My presence, another variable in the herd's decision-making. And the land pressed back, not metaphorically, but physically. Lupin dragging blue-scented lines across my skin, grass catching at the architecture of my legs, as if to say, we know you by how you are touched, not by how you observe. The pressure of place became a kind of language, an alphabet spoken through contact. And something in me gave way. Identity no longer a position, but a pressure system. Something shaped by contact, in resistance. In the refusal of the world to let me pass through it without being altered. When I trail, this is what opens, a kind of threshold where the body loosens into more than human grammar, where attention becomes field, where the question of belonging stops being abstract and becomes sensation. Tracking, I realize, is not about finding animals. It is about entering a condition where separation fails, where perception leaks past the boundary of skin, where the nervous system stops locating itself in here and begins registering out there as continuous. Next slide, please. I love this picture. I wanted to just name, that's me with bighorn sheep tracks on the left. Wildlife tracking is an indigenous lifeway. a science developed over thousands of years in relationship with living systems. It never agreed to the terms of separation in the first place. It's a way of knowing that is accountable to place, because place is already aware of you. What I was learning that morning following the elk was not just how to identify the elk herd and the elk hoof prints. I was learning how to enter accountability with a place. As an autistic person, I began to recognize that perceptual styles I had been taught were deficits were actually forms of ecological intelligence. Ways of sensing pattern, tension, relationship before they become visible to others. A kind of distributed awareness that does not stop at the edge of the body. For feeling pattern before it resolves into object. So when I say following elk changed me, again, I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it reorganized where I experienced thinking as happening. And relational knowledge is something that changes us when we're willing to follow it far enough. That morning, I understood something I haven't been able to unlearn. That knowledge is not stored in the human mind. It is negotiated between bodies, between species, between memory and movement, between the living and what refuses to stop living through us. And belonging is not something we are given. It is something that happens when the world presses into us with enough intimacy that we can no longer pretend we are separate from what we are touching. Thank you all so much for your attention. I just want to name this photo here is of plaster casts that I've made, and it's the one that's in the center is a puma, and it's on buckskin that I like deer hide that I tanned. So I just want to name that one. These beings here. As a neuroqueer scholar, I have had to question the assumption that intelligence has a single shape. Many neurodivergent people are attuned to patterns across time, across space, to deep focus, to subtle shifts in environmental and social fields. These are not deficits. They are capacities for forms of scholarship that are relational and responsive. Ways of knowing that remain in conversation with what is unfolding. And these capacities are not just valuable in ecological research and leadership. They are essential for navigating the futures we're already entering. For many of us moving through scientific spaces, indigenous, queer, trans, neurodivergent, first generation, women of color, imagination is not optional. It is how we orient. When dominant systems do not fully recognize us, imagination becomes a wayfinding faculty, a way of sensing possible futures before they are visible, of locating ourselves inside fields that were not designed to hold us. Not fantasy, not escape, but imagination as a survival technology, a method for perceiving belonging before it is confirmed. Next slide, please. This is what led me to co-create Queer Nature in 2015, a community organism braiding indigenous lifeway knowledge and Western ecological science through trans and autistic leadership. That's my spouse and myself. A place where we practice tracking, fire stewardship, relational skill, not as isolated techniques, but as ways of becoming accountable to ecosystems and to each other. Next slide, please. It's a picture of one of our programs called Queer Stealthcraft. In some ways, we're like we're in camo. We're like apprenticing to camo, but we also like to call it being in drag with the earth. So yeah, so this is a place where we practice. It's a place of practice, and a place that recognizes that queer, trans, non-binary, and two-spirit people have always carried survival knowledge, not in spite of who we are, but through it. Next slide, please. This is a photo of us in our hide tanning class. We have a lot of sass. Experiences like these began to change how I understood what knowledge is and who gets recognized as a knowledge holder. Next slide, please. This is a toad walking. It's so beautiful. I also want to name something personal, I guess another personal thing. I'm not the only person, or I am the only person represented in this mural who does not hold a graduate degree. That doesn't mean I'm not a scholar. My teachers were indigenous scientists whose laboratories were camas prairies and migration corridors. And my peer review has often come through kinship, through the more than human community, through whether knowledge supports the continuation of life. Scholarship can take many forms. And today, as we search for regenerative futures, we need multiple ways of knowing working together. Indigenous science, neurodivergent cognition, and multi-species relational knowledge are not outside of science. They expand what science can be. They are essential partners in shaping the futures we are now being asked to imagine. This mural that we're honoring today is not just artwork. It is a beautiful artwork. It is also a constellation in addition to artwork. It represents scientists whose work has expanded what is possible, not only through curiosity, but through devotion, imagination, and care. Many of the people represented here come from lineages that have been historically underrepresented in scientific spaces. Next slide, please. Representation matters because it expands who we recognize as a knowledge holder. This is so beautiful. I don't know if y'all can see, but it's like this circular print, and it's that's my rattlesnake earring, but I put it next to where the other rattle imprint on the inside. Kind of, it's like I call it a rattlesnake donut. This mural is a part of the ongoing act of imagination, a reminder that science is not static, it is a living conversation. And if we listen closely, we can feel that conversation moving through us. And the next poem comes from that place. Next slide, please. I like how I prompted that, and this is actually a poem within itself. I did not put words there for a reason. But I'll share a little bit. There's a coyote moving through on the top, and turkey vultures moving this way. And the circular motion is actually grass making that, like vegetation making that from the wind. So next slide, please. So for a closing poem, this is called Field Scholar in the Age of Amnesia. I was not granted access through the usual gates. No letters of recommendation arrived stamped with the authority of bone. My professors had antlers, had radula, had the slow intelligence of lichen writing weather into stone. Still, the land kept extending invitations, not always as beauty, sometimes as longing, sometimes as awe so precise it rearranged my breathing, sometimes as the quiet terror of realizing belonging is not a given, It is practice until the body remembers it was never separate. I learned to track in the long imprint of settler colonialism still moving through the land. Its spore still fresh in the distributed soil of policy, in the rerouted veins of rivers, in the absence that howls where herds once moved like weather. In landscapes where indigenous science was pronounced extinct while it continued quietly to keep the water moving, to remember where the fires must pass, to whisper instructions through root systems and ash. My notebooks filled with traces, not data, but encounters. The soft collapse of bedding ground, the displaced pebble that refuses accident, the signature of an animal who will not be reduced to a variable. And something in me began to reorganize. I started to understand scholarship not as accumulation, but as exposure, as a practice of being altered by what you study, as a relationship that studies you back. In this way, autistic perception was never a deficit, it was a tuning, a distributed sensory field, an exo-nervous system reaching past the border of skin, capable of registering microweather, the tectonic drift of species, the unspeakable grief of dammed rivers and lifeways. I came to understand that non-normative ways of knowing are not errors, they are adaptations, forms of cognition shaped for remaining in conversation with a world that refuses to be object. So I stand here alongside scientists whose brilliance has been made visible in this mural. Constellation makers in disciplines that did not know how to see them until they insisted on being seen. We were taught to imagine, not as escape, but as orientation, a way to find ourselves inside fields still learning how to hold us. I honor them, their ancestors, their transcestors, the lineages that refuse disappearance. And I honor, too, the scholars without institutions, whose libraries migrate with the caribou, whose dissertations are written in ash, in regrowth, and in hoofprint, whose methodologies include ceremony, apprenticeship, listening, until the self becomes permeable enough to be instructed. Indigenous science did not vanish, it adapted. It went underground, it went into muscle memory, it hid in plain sight, in the curvature of tracks, in the timing of bloom, in the refusal to forget that knowledge is a relationship that obligates you. And now, as we search for futures that do not replicate collapse, it is these life ways of knowing, these multi-species epistemologies that offer continuity, that remind us leadership may not look like command, it may look like attunement, like knowing when to step lightly, when to burn, when to follow, when to be undone by what you're trying to understand. This is the longest study I know. How to belong without erasing what belongs with you. How to become porous enough to feel the world thinking through you and still remain accountable to what you feel. How to become a field scholar in a world just beginning to remember that intelligence was never only human. Woo. Thank you all. Well, I had one more thing to say, but I think that was a great ending. Okay, I'll say it. Okay. If there's one thread I hope you carry with you, it is that belonging is not something you simply find. It is something we practice in how we pay attention, in how we make room for different ways of knowing. And as we imagine the futures we're now being asked to shape, I believe we need many forms of intelligence working together. Not only human intelligence, but ecological intelligence, relational intelligence, mycelial intelligence, collective intelligence, intelligence that has always been larger than the human. Thank you for being a part of that ongoing study.
All right. Thank you, Pinar. Thank you for sharing your story, your poems, and your work with us. We are grateful for the ways you connect science, art, sustainability, belonging, and for the care and awe you bring to community-rooted work. As we continue our program, I want to take a moment to name something important. This mural did not happen overnight. It came to life through imagination, advocacy, collaboration, and a shared belief that inclusive representation in science matters. This work exists because of many people. If you contributed to this project in any way and are here today, I invite you to stand so we can recognize you. Thank you for the talent, the time, and the heart you brought to this work. We are also honored to have with us today another scientist that is represented on the mural, Dr. Rachel Levine, who will be joining us later in the program. All right, to help us reflect on how this project came to be and to guide us into the dedication, I am honored to invite our interim president, Shannon Dykes, to share a few words and to welcome our panelists. Reverend Dr. Shannon W. Dykes began serving as interim president. Sorry, I just lost my place. On July 1st, 2025. Prior to this 2-year appointment, she served as vice president for student affairs, equity, and belonging at EMU. Shannon has spent 15 years working in learning communities and ministry settings, including the past 6 years at EMU, where she has nurtured a co-curricular vision of social accountability, holistic well-being, and academic success for all students. Please join me in welcoming Shannon to the stage.
I'm gonna turn it on. Okay. Hi, can I do this one? Good afternoon. Pinar. What you just gave us was brilliance. Thank you. I've got words on a piece of paper and I'm gonna try to make it through them, but I feel the beauty and the power of what has been shared today. So, good afternoon and welcome. What we get to celebrate here today is creativity and it is mission. Just as Dawn named, this mural didn't happen by accident. It began with a question that we continue to ask across this university: how do we more fully live out our commitments to inclusive excellence? Not as abstract value, but as something visible, as something embodied, as something formative in our shared spaces. Through Inclusive Excellence grants from our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office, that process invites students and faculty and staff to imagine projects that move us from aspiration to action. And so this mural is one of those projects, born from vision and collaboration and now giving life to campus. The 2022 original proposal named both a truth and a hope. I went back and I found the original proposal, and it reminded us of this, and I quote it. EMU is a university that has prided itself in its inclusive practices for years now. The creation of the Black Lives Matter mural was a testimony of EMU's promise to make this campus a space where everyone matters. And it challenges us further in saying this. Recognizing that STEM is one of the fields for which it has historically been difficult for non-white, non-male, and non-heteronormative cisgender people to gain recognition and representation. Those were the words written by our students, our staff, our faculty who imagined this into being. This mural responds to that reality, not with just critique, not with just absence, but with imagination, that word that you gave us life to see. It makes visible what has too often been unseen. It names the contributions that have too often gone unrecognized, and perhaps most importantly, it offers reflection and invitation to those who walk these halls every day, especially to students who may be asking quietly or aloud, is there a place for me in this field? Today, we're doing several things at once. We're honoring that imagination. To the students and the faculty who called this into being, whose creativity and discipline and collaboration brought this vision into form. Your work has given us something lasting, something that will teach long after today. You have not simply created a mural, you have helped shape the intellectual and spiritual landscape of this campus. We're grateful, not only for your artistry, but for your partnership in helping this university live more fully into its mission. We're also celebrating the scientists depicted here, individuals whose work has expanded human knowledge and whose lives reflect persistence and brilliance and courage across barriers. Among them is Pinar, whose presence in this mural reflects the importance of ecological knowledge, interdisciplinary thinking, and global awareness in the understanding of science. And we're also honored to welcome Dr. Rachel Levine, whose leadership in public health and whose inclusion in this mural signals both excellence and representation. Dr. Levine's work has not only shaped critical health systems, but has also expanded who is seen, recognized, and affirmed within scientific leadership. Together, these figures and all of those represented remind us that excellence in science has never been limited to a single identity, even if recognition has been. And we're affirming something today about EMU itself, that we are a place that's willing to name gaps and then do the work to address them. That we believe representation is not symbolic alone, it is formative. It shapes imagination and belonging and possibility. And as the proposal so clearly stated, women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+ individuals at EMU would be greatly impacted by heightened awareness of people like themselves who have been successful in STEM. This mural stands as a daily witness to that truth. It will speak words to future students, those who will pause in this building, in that hallway, and perhaps see themselves reflected for the first time in a scientist, in a thinker, in a creator. And in that moment, something will shift. Possibility will expand. And so we are grateful today for the vision and the imagination that has allowed that to be. As we do so today, we add the voices of our panelists who can give voice to how this came to be. I want to invite those who have helped to carry this project from idea into reality, inviting you all forward to join us here in the chairs behind me. Your vision, your advocacy, and your willingness to imagine something more have made this possible. As they come forward, Dante, Pinar, Asha, who am I forgetting? Tara, thank you, I'm sorry. As you all come forward, I want to offer gratitude. Oh, Veronica, are you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Feel free to join these seats here. As you all come forward, We hold this as more than conversation, even more than dedication. This is commitment to continue to shape something around this campus, something within this campus, where excellence and inclusion are not competing values, but intertwined. Thank you for your voices that weave this together with us and for us. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today and being willing to speak a little more.
Little unplanned, but we're fine. Yes, we have another chair. Since we had more of the artists that helped create the mural show up at the dedication, which is amazing, we're going to let them go ahead and be part of the panel as well. So just give us a minute. You got it, Shay? Okay. That chair is going to be for you, if you need it.
We'll just begin by introducing yourselves and your connection to the mural.
Hi, I'm Asha Landis Beck, she, her, and I entered the process of the mural around the time that we started putting together the grant and then did a lot of the painting.
Hello, I'm Molly Pwanka, they, them pronouns. I was also there at the beginning of going through the grant process. And then my contribution was more so the initial design of the mural. And I just did teeny tiny bit of painting, but yeah, I did the initial design.
Hi, my name is Afton Rhodes-Lehman, she, her, and I was a part of the initial artistic planning side of things. I helped to write the grant, and I did the digital mock-ups for the background of the mural and painted that as well.
Tara Kishba. I feel like I maybe shouldn't be up here. Y'all did so much more. They brought this idea, the students brought this idea to the Science Center folks, and at that time I was department chair in biology, chemistry, and environmental science, and they were thinking about maybe putting it in the stairwell, and I was like, oh no, we can do so much better than that. So I think that was probably my biggest contribution, was just saying, let's get it upstairs so that you can see it as you come in the building, and really have your eye drawn to it.
Hello, I'm Dante Flo. I'm a third-year biochemistry student. Pronouns are they, them. I was invited to join the panel as a student representative for someone who feels connected to the mural. I did not participate in creating the mural at all. I am just here to be a voice for students that would like to ask questions or, speak to the artist and the people in the mural.
I'm Veronica Horst, they, them. I was part of the designing the portraits and painting the mural.
I'm Pinar Sinopoulos-Lloyd, they, them. I am just in awe right now because I'm a part of the mural. I'm in the mural, so one of many, and so just in awe right now, being with you all. Yeah.
What role does art play in science and vice versa?
Everything. They're absolutely tied completely, from the actual execution of illustrating for information to understanding how the world works and then expressing that. I think of art as a form of documentation, and I think that in itself is very, very scientific. So.
Hi. So just even before coming to college, my big inspiration was I read this story about somebody that went into exactly the same thing I did, of art education plus environmental science. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I've since learned that there's this certain creativity and curiosity that comes up in both of these fields, where that's actually a very common confusion point for people of do I want to go in the science? Do I want to go in the art? Which one? And I did both. But yeah, I think there's just, I think nature and just the world around us, I call that all art. I think everything is art. It's all a creation of some sort. And yeah, so I think it just seamlessly fits together.
Yeah, I feel really art and science are kind of just two ways of looking at the same thing, or two different types of analyzing depending on what tools you have. And yeah, so they're very intertwined. I know I don't know, recently I've been looking into a lot of color chemistry with natural dyes, and that has taught me a lot about yeah, art is science. I thought I was doing an art project. It's a science experiment. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo what others have said, which is that, and I especially heard this, Pinar, when you were speaking, that part of it is really careful observation and then wondering, right? It's the two things. It's not just the observation and sort of categorizing and stopping there. It's the really careful observation and then the creativity, the imagination that comes next. You can do some science with one or the other, you can do some art with one or the other, but where they really shine is when you combine those two things.
I think that art functions very well at bringing familiarity to science. So a lot of people try to talk about the misconception of science and art being separate, but we as people in the STEM field have learned the language of science, and then many people are familiar with the language of art. So being able to express the science through art gives everyone the ability to understand our language as well. So it's a good connecting point, and that's what I appreciate about the connection and the deconstructing the idea that they are separate things.
So well said. Yeah, it's a language to each other. I was trying to figure out how to phrase this. Just kind of a commentary on art and science. Often, I think it's easier for people. You can call yourself an artist, even when you haven't formally studied art in class. And I feel like there's more of a barrier to that in science. And Pinar, I really appreciated how you addressed that. And yeah, it reminds me of a story who my friend told me of her neighbors who tap trees and make maple syrup. And her family always kind of does a more, what we typically think of scientific observations and testing the chemistry and temperature of things, but her neighbor, accurate every single year, he watches for a certain icicle to fall off of a rock, and that's when it's time. And I'm not really sure what I want to say with that, but just sharing that.
Why is representation in science important? And feel free to intertwine your own personal stories and journey in feeling represented in science, or not.
So I feel that representation is really important because, like, being in any sort of field and then being the like the person as a representer, words, you become a role model for many people who feel like they might not fit in the space, or they feel afraid to put themselves into the space because they feel othered is the term that like many people have talked about feeling. But when you find, again, the word I'm going to use is familiarity, when you find someone that you can feel related to, then it creates a connection that they might not know you have with them, but you feel inspired by them. You feel that you can see yourself in their shoes because they're doing it as well. So it gives you confidence and it gives you support. And if you ever have the chance to meet the person, then you can tell them how much that they mean to you.
I can say something in response to that. Yeah, I would just echo, well, I'm just really thanking you for sharing about telling the person, because that honestly is what keeps me going, is as someone who has been like, like the only whatever it is, like whether it's indigenous or trans or what have you, like in a space that I'm in wildlife tracking and other fields in that adjacent space, it can be really, I've definitely experienced a lot of like scapegoating and like being isolated as the first blank, in those fields. And so it's so important to hear that, like for me, of like, oh, this is, sometimes I get so tired and exhausted. And so to hear that kind of like the impact, especially in the spaces that remain homogenous, is, it makes such a big difference. So speaking to my personal experience, like that feels, I don't know, just felt important to say after you mentioned that, so yeah.
My experience starting in elementary school with science specifically is a lot of kids would say, that's one of the hard subjects, like I can't do that. And I think that there's a barrier to accessibility there. I think that the idea of the humanities being something that you can just do versus the sciences being something that's like you have to be a certain amount of smart, whatever. I think that having representation there is going to make it accessible for people, to show that like anybody can get into this, anybody can do this, it doesn't matter who you are, and it's very important that that's the case. So.
I didn't early on in my scientific career realize the importance of representation. I didn't meet another female organic chemist who was like a professor until I was almost on my PhD. So I'd made it all the way through undergrad and almost the entire way through my PhD before I met another female organic chemistry professor. Now I met other people who were in grad school like me who were female. I met some folks who were working in pharmaceuticals, but nobody else who was like in higher education. And what the cumulative effect of that over several years was that I didn't know how to find myself in space. Like, I think what's lovely about a mural like this, which depicts different individuals with different life stories and different sort of areas of expertise and the breadth of it, is that you can find that like, oh, I have an overlap over here and a little overlap over there, and then I'm unique in this way, and maybe that's what makes me odd, or that maybe that's my gift. But if it's super narrow and you're struggling at all, then the logic part of your brain is like, maybe this is because it's not for you. And so I think what's like really lovely about something about this is it helps you find yourself in the space. And that was really what I was so excited about, was the students like picking, like the students providing input on who they wanted to see, so that they were like making the map, right? Like they were creating the map so that they could see aspects of themselves on the wall, so the incoming students would see that as well. Yeah,
I feel like for me, going back to what Afton was saying, I was always the kid growing up that like took the longest on tests. I was always going to be there way longer. My processing was always super slow, and I would get a lot of comments about that I was dumb. And that just was like really hard to be faced with, of just hearing many words that just did not sit well with me and did not feel like it was necessarily true to my being either. I've since realized I'm a very neurodivergent person. I'm also queer. But now I have found myself in truancy work, and I have so many curious kids that I work with. It's incredible. It's like the kids that are pushed out of school and are at home or whatever, like incredible thinkers and stuff. So many. I have so many neurodivergent youth that I work with currently, and it's a thing that I always try to help them to think, like, just because you're stuck in this situation right now, this does not mean anything against who you are as a person. Because, yeah, I've just, through getting to know these youth and stuff, like, super intelligent kids, super intelligent. And I'm somebody that believes intelligence shows up in everybody in its own unique way anyway. But, yeah, I've just gone to meet so many curious kids through my current work, and yeah, it's just so hard to see how the current education system affects people and pushes people out. So I think having people lifted up more and more shows the kids that have been pushed down to the bottom that they are so much more than that.
Yeah, and I think that like not only having representation of what a scientist can look like, but what science itself can look like is so important to like push back against what we think of as like science, and not only to celebrate like people of minority identities who are fitting into what we believe is science, but people who are providing different ways of using science and thinking about science. And that's kind of what you had talked about before, of like this might not be like a scientific method or something, but like this is science. And so yeah, I think that's also part of representation and why it matters.
Yeah. I didn't know. Are we good on time? We should speed it up. Okay. So I finished cancer treatment, and I get some brain fog. So it actually will take me a little bit extra time. Just forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, representation is so important. As a white woman, the norm has been feeling represented. So I didn't get to feel that difference. I didn't really recognize that difference until one day on Instagram, I saw videographers that were two queer women. And as a queer woman, I had been in videography classes. It had mostly been men. Sometimes I was the only female in the class. And what came over me, seeing these queer women, all of a sudden I could see myself in that profession. And it's hard to describe that feeling, but just completely, changed how I viewed myself and how I looked at my path forward. and the world, and that is so important.
Last question. What do you hope this mural communicates moving forward?
The abstract design against behind the portraits in the mural was sort of one of it's one of the conceptions that I really wanted to have be a part of this mural. I took it from what scans of DNA would look like, and then part of our concept was that these people were sort of melting into and phasing in and out of this DNA that is what science is, and that science is all of the people who execute it, and there is no barrier of entry for that. So I think that's very important.
I hope it continues to honor people who didn't really get recognition for the work that they did. I know that probably one of the names on the mural that people are most familiar with is Katherine Johnson, because of her story being told through the book and film Hidden Figures. And I think that for a lot of people kind of made us realize how much we don't know about women of color doing, or how people of minority identities were involved in a lot of influential work. And we don't get to hear about it because it was overshadowed. So I think paying homage to that and continuing to incite curiosity in people as they see it, and wonder who these individuals are and who else they might not be familiar with, who's had a big impact on science and whatever field they may be studying.
So, how do I describe this? For me, whenever I walk past the mural, this is how I feel about it. I always see it, and I'm like, these people are my friends, and they're my colleagues, and they're my inspiration. I may not know them on a personal level, but every time I see them on the wall of this building, I know that people recognize the work that they've done, and I also want to make sure I always acknowledge the work that they've done as well, and I want to help continue the work. It might not be one for one like what they research, I research, but we're all working together to make sure that we as people understand as much of the world as we can.
Joy. It's joy. Every time I see it, it makes me happy. And I hope then that what it continues to do is exactly what you said, is sort of and I think Pinar, you said this as well, sort of like your ancestors, you know what I mean? They're blessing you on your journey. It makes me happy.
Thank you all so much for your input today.
Thank you.
Actually, okay. All right. Actually, I think, yeah, okay. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you to our panelists for your thoughtful, engaging conversation. Public art plays an important role in shaping how we see ourselves and how we experience our shared spaces. It invites connection, reflection, and conversation. To help us think about that impact in a broader community, I am pleased to introduce Jenny Burden, Executive Director of the Arts Council of the Valley.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I'll just repeat it, if
Okay.
that's okay. Good afternoon, she, her. So what role does public art play in shaping a healthy and thriving community? There are many, many answers to that question, and entire books have actually been written on that subject. But from a personal perspective, as director of the Arts Council, and to respect your time this afternoon, I want to share just one way I have witnessed that power. A few years ago, some of you may remember this, Opening Doors, The Art of Inclusion was envisioned as a temporary public art project in which 20 artists transformed ordinary household doors into stories of diversity and inclusion. The city of Harrisonburg installed those doors, those completed doors, throughout downtown. And for more than 6 months, art doors stood in front of private businesses and in front of public offices alike. The 20 artists were celebrated and given a platform on which to tell their stories of people who were underrepresented, people who had been excluded. I heard visitors and locals talking excitedly about the individual doors they saw on their Opening Doors art walk. One grandmother asked if we were going to do anything like it again because it gave her a meaningful activity to do with her 10-year-old grandson. It opened the door, sorry for the pun, for interesting and sometimes difficult conversations, and that grandmother loved it, and so did the grandson, actually. They took the tour many times. Opening Doors, The Art of Inclusion was able to shed light on underrepresented communities and stories in an instant, even quicker than reading a post on, what, Facebook? Instagram? Where do you read posts now? So how transformative was Opening Doors, The Art of Inclusion? This one temporary project amplified and celebrated diverse voices. It made our downtown more vibrant and walkable. It encouraged connection between generations, and it let the world know that Harrisonburg is an inclusive community. Opening Doors, The Art of Inclusion played a powerful and meaningful role in shaping this community. And that community includes EMU, Eastern Mennonite University, where most of the doors were exhibited for about 8 months, thanks in large part to the efforts of Harrisonburg's mayor and EMU Director of Alumni Engagement and Community Connections, Dina Reed. Yes. And we are still seeing ripples from this one temporary public art project. After traveling from downtown Harrisonburg to EMU's campus, the doors have found a permanent home in Virginia Mennonite Retirement Community. The impact of Opening Doors continues to resonate with people to this day. If a temporary public art project can create so many long-lasting positive ripples in a community, just imagine the power of permanent art installations, such as the one being dedicated here today. Thank you, EMU, for your important work in using public art to help shape a healthy, thriving, and inclusive community. We applaud you.
Thank you, Jenny, for those thoughtful words and for helping us see more clearly the impact of public art in our community. We are almost at the end of our formal program, and before we close, I want to thank all of you for being here. I truly appreciate you staying present with us. Before we conclude, I would like to share a few words from Dr. Negris Mavala, one of the scientists represented on the mural who sent words for us to read. She says, I am honored to be included with so many wonderful luminaries. Inclusivity in the sciences is critical, and I'm proud that EMU continues to strive toward this goal. Ensuring that people feel a sense of belonging strengthens our educational communities and strengthens science itself. We are also honored that Dr. Rachel Levine is able to join us today. Dr. Levine, thank you for being here. If you would like to share a few words, we would be honored to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here. Pinar did an absolutely fantastic job talking about their work and in the synergy in terms of nature and ourselves. I was just very, very impressed. Thank you very much. The panel was wonderful, and it's really just an honor to be here, and certainly an honor to be included in the panel. So I'm looking forward to meeting you upstairs.
Pinar, if you would like to offer any closing reflections as well, we would love to hear from you.
I got it. I love that I can just turn around and do that. Yeah, I'm just really grateful and just very moved by the presences of everyone's presence here, and just yeah, this is one thing that I was just with while we were here tonight with each other, and I just wanted to name, in a world that trains us to be disenchanted, attention is a form of resistance. And so I just really made the invitation be simple, to just keep noticing and tending to our curiosity and wonder, and letting ourselves be in awe with the world. So thank you all so much for having me here. Yeah.
Thank you. As we close, I want to name that what we are truly honoring today. We honor the scientists represented in this mural, the artists who brought it to life, and every person in the arts and sciences who has had to push a little harder against systems that were not built with them in mind. This mural is both a celebration and a call to continue the work of building a truly inclusive community. When more people belong in science, science belongs to all of us. Thank you for being here. The mural is just upstairs and through the doors to the left. Pinar and Dr. Rachel Levine will be signing their portraits. So please join us, enjoy some refreshments, take time to connect with one another and with the mural. Thank you for coming.